Hello, it's finally happening. Welcome to my first episode of Spill the Tea with Brook Casey. It's me, and it is time to have some conversations. I'm so excited. This is my first episode, and I can't wait to share some insights with you guys that I've been gathering, that I've been working on for the last couple of years to share on this platform. It is Thirsty Thursday, and on Thirsty Thursday, we spill the tea with me, Brook Casey. This is a space where I want to talk about all of the things that I have sort of observed, interpreted, experienced in queer culture, in San Francisco culture, but out in a social environment that's very much reactive to a lot of the things that we're going through right now in this post-COVID, social media obsessed world. And I've thought about how can I best, share some observations, but this platform, being able to talk via podcast, I thought would be a great way to connect, invite conversation, and share a little bit about what I'm experiencing and also helping people make some connections with what others are experiencing. I feel like so much is happening out there in the world, in the social community and the dating community. And I have found that, we are wrestling with these feelings of isolation, of loneliness, of rejection, of not feeling like we're enough. And I wanted to start some conversations about that. I'm currently pursuing my master's degree in psychology at Pepperdine University on the LMFT track. With this, I hope to get my marriage and family therapist license and start a practice to help people process, to work out relationship issues, and to help find some purpose and meaning and confidence for us to take out there into the world. So again, welcome to this first episode, which is called Who I Am. And I wanted to call it that because there's these constant questions that I've been faced with about who am I and what really do I want and how do I best achieve these goals. And so many conversations I'm having with friends right now are really circling around this topic, them figuring out who they are, what they want, how to achieve happiness, because really, in this post-COVID world, I'm seeing so much just over-intoxication, self-medication, over-analyzing of social situations that are leading people down this path of depression and isolation. And so I just want to talk about it. I want to spill the tea, if you will. So thank you for joining me on this ride. This first episode, I want to open up a little bit about who I am, my perspective, where I'm coming from, and see if there's some connections that you might want to make within that experience. My background is basically I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. Holla, the desert. I'm a 90s ravers kid. So I was out in the desert dancing to techno music back when you used to have to follow the bass beat out into the desert and have those late night guerrilla style raves. So I really come from that core plur mentality, that peace, love, unity, and respect vibe that was really created in rave culture back in the 90s. And that really gave me a sense of freedom of expression out there dancing to music. And that was really my therapy, as I was going through a lot of insecurity and doubt as a young queer kid growing up in Phoenix, Arizona. So that really was a sanctuary for me, and I still continue so much of that dance therapy, if you will, out there by going to music festivals. I go to different dance nights in the Castro in San Francisco where I live. And so dance has been a big part of my life, of getting out some emotions and just dealing with things. And I can feel that can be very healthy. But at the same time, I've noticed a lot of, toxic behavior in that environment, some that I've also taken part in. There's an extreme overusage of drugs and alcohol, and it can lead to some really toxic behavior and some really unfortunate circumstances. So I want to share a little bit about that in later episodes. But for this one, I really want to focus on what I call, or what I've learned being called, core beliefs. And I want to talk about these core beliefs because I realize that most of our issues and our problems stem from these core beliefs that we have about ourselves. And because we have these core beliefs, we are reacting and acting out in life to sort of compensate for some of these beliefs that we have about ourselves. So after I moved from Phoenix, Arizona, I went to Chapman University in Orange County to pursue a theater degree. I was a performer and an actor. And so much of that program was about self-analyzation. It was about looking at yourself, your habits, your behaviors, unpacking your traumas and your significant life events that have really impacted you to make you the person that you are. And in doing so, you can then use some of those things in character development. How could you create a character if you don't fully understand who you are? And then how can you use yourself in dramatic presentations? That's also called method acting, right? Where you're using your own core beliefs to create characters. So I started this exploration many, many years ago. But now that I'm in this study of psychology, flash forward 20 years, these are also conversations we're having in some of these formative classes that I'm in. But I want to add a little something different to that perspective. I was recently speaking with a friend who I admire deeply in the San Francisco queer community, and he said to me, these aren't core beliefs, or maybe they are, but really what they are myths. They're core myths, and I really liked that because it basically is true in the fact that they're not really true, right? They're myths. We believe them to be true. We subscribe to these beliefs, but we don't have to. Somewhere in our upbringing, whether it was our parents or our peer group or our church or our society or the pop culture around us that made us feel this way about ourselves, that programmed these core myths, they don't necessarily ring true all the time, right? We can change them. This is what people go to therapy for, is to unpack what these core beliefs are and maybe question them and ultimately reprogram them. So I want to call them myths because that, I believe, is what they are. And with these myths, we can choose to believe them or not. So I've thought of a couple ways to help myself get to the bottom of what my core beliefs are. And in my training, I've been given a couple of questions that will help me get there. And I really narrowed it down to 3 core myths that most of us hold about ourselves, that we are ultimately all reacting and trying to make up for. So I want to start with asking yourself these 3 questions. Number 1, am I special or am I not special? Number 2, am I enough or am I not enough? And finally, am I beautiful or am I ugly? Based on how you answer those 3 questions will lead you to your 3 core myths. And I like those 3 because I really feel like they control so much of our behavior. So I want to unpack that a little bit. If you answered the question to I am special or I am not special, if you genuinely believe you are special, then you're going to go through life feeling like you've got high potential and that you're unique and different and you can achieve greatness. Something outside the norm. You have ambition, you have drive, and you genuinely believe you are special and unique, and you want to live up to that greatness. The other side of that coin, though, can be feeling depressed that you're not achieving your full potential, right? Where I have times in my life where I doubt where I'm at because I know I could be someplace better or more extraordinary. So being someone that does believe that I am special, it does wonders for my ambition and for my desires for a great future. But it can really hold me back in ways of feeling, God, like, how have I not achieved this greatness yet? Or how come I've not been able to measure up to other people that have achieved greatness? So there's 2 sides of that coin of feeling special that can hold us back in our day-to-day lives or push us forward into a space of wanting to create greatness. Now, if you're the person that genuinely doesn't believe you're special, that's okay. That just means that you are very content being part of the norm, just clicking in, not necessarily being extraordinary, not needing to do anything extraordinary, clock in, clock out. There can be a comfort and a safety in this core myth. None is right or wrong. It's just interesting to look at yourself and ask yourself what you genuinely believe about yourself, if you're special or if you're not special. One of, I think, the more difficult questions to answer about yourself is whether you're enough or not enough. This is something that I think most people I've met really, really struggle with. If you believe genuinely that you are enough, you approach life feeling confident, right? You believe that you belong and you are deserving to be in that room, and that you can show your strengths and share your wisdoms and your experiences confidently. Now, if you struggle with not feeling enough, that somewhere in your programming, someone deep down in your childhood, in your formative years, told you you weren't enough and that you needed or could be better. You'll go through life needing to constantly prove yourself, needing to be the fittest or the smartest person in the room or the most interesting. And with that insecurity of not really believing that you are enough, you're constantly trying to prove yourself. I see this all the time. I experience this myself, right? Trying to be clever, trying to put this best image forward so that people want you around, that people want to invite you to all their parties, that people want to be around your energy. There's a lot of compensating that can happen when you genuinely don't feel that you are enough and that you've got to really prove yourself and prove your worth. This can also have its benefits, right? Because it will have you striving to be better, to get more knowledge, to get more education, to travel more and get more experience, because you want to fill your cup. If your cup is empty, you're constantly wanting to fill it. And that can lead to a lot of growth and a lot of improvement of self. So again, neither one of these things is bad. It's just important, I think, for us to recognize what our core myth is. So then we can really analyze why we act the way that we act. And that can help us sometimes adjust these feelings of inadequacy or these actions of overcompensation and help us, put that in check. I think one of the most difficult questions to answer is that third one, which is, am I ugly or am I beautiful? And this is really hard because I think this does change in different parts of your life. But deep down in our core, we believe genuinely one or the other. And I think people that really believe that they are beautiful, they walk with self-assurance. They hold themselves confidently. And they're not always trying to better the way that they look. So much insecurity comes out in trying to convince ourselves and everyone around us that we're beautiful. I mean, think about it. I think ever since we're young teens, young kids, we've got magazines and movies and television shows that are always showing such attractive, airbrushed supermodels. How can we not want to measure up to that? How do we not get the messaging that we're just not good enough or beautiful enough? And that in fact we're ugly. So trying to reprogram that, trying to live a life in reaction to that, where we're at the gym, we are wearing the best fashions and name brands, manipulating our face and figures with dieting, plastic surgery, makeup, you name it. You look at people like the Kardashians, you think any of that is natural beauty? It's all manufactured and it's all coming out of a place where they just, and we don't, as a society for the most part, believe that we're genuinely beautiful. So again, to reiterate, one's not right or wrong or good or bad. I think it's just important to take inventory of these things. When I graduated from college after Chapman University, I moved up to LA to pursue my career as an actor. And here I was, this skinny, scrawny, ginger, freckled boy that really did not fit the current beauty standards. Now, there are also two sides of that coin. I knew my uniqueness would put me in a category that was less popularized. So I knew my competition would be a little less going out for auditions and castings. But at that time in the early aughts, it was all about Abercrombie and Fitch. It was all about being fit and muscular And that was the beauty standard at the time. And so for me, I didn't really fit into it. And it created a lot of insecurities. It created this sense of me really feeling like I wasn't good looking enough. And so because of that, you spend a lot of time reacting to that, like trying to make yourself feel better. So I see that so much in my community. I mean, I go to the gym pretty regularly and I just see the way people work out religiously. And I see in the queer community how many people use steroids. And they use tanning and they use overworking out at times and they're food prepping. And yes, there is a lot of self-care involved in some of those activities, but it really comes down to a lot of body dysmorphic disorder. I mean, this is so common, not only in women, which we hear about all the time with eating disorders, but really with men as well, also with eating disorders and the overusage of cosmetic procedures. I saw this a lot in LA. I still see this a lot in LA. In San Francisco now, where I live, maybe not so much, right? I'm very much in love with this city because there is such an authenticity to it. There's a core Burning Man culture vibe in San Francisco, which is really about radical self-expression, radical self-reliance, inclusion, all of these great principles that help promote, I think, a healthy sense of self. Aside from San Francisco, I've also had the experience of spending a lot of time in New York. There was a time where I was working with the Blue Man Group and I was in the rehearsal process, an audition process in Manhattan. And that was such a wonderful time in my life. It was an 8-month period where I had to do intensive drum training every week, and really it built a lot of self-confidence in me. I was at the gym regularly. I really needed to fit this type. This blue man that was 6 foot tall, that all looked the same, very Starbucks coffee. And so it gave me a project to work to and a little bit of confidence in like, wow, I can really do this thing. I can be a part of this incredible show. And I got to learn this new skill of drumming. But when I was in New York, I really observed this like hustle culture where you really have to be. I always thought when you lived in LA, you could wanna be. There was a lot of wannabes in LA, but in New York, you had to be. There was no time for the wannabes. You didn't cut it, you had to leave town. But with that said, there was such a hustle there and such a wonderful sense of accomplishment when you achieve what you're working towards in such a phenomenal city like New York. I now use these taglines for the 3 cities I've had the pleasure of living in. In New York, you have to be. In LA, you want to be. But in San Francisco, you can just be. There's some tea for you. So I want to go back a little bit to these core beliefs or these core myths and really help you process. So now that we've sort of unpacked these core myths, how do we acknowledge these beliefs that are indeed myths and have the power to change them? That's the real key, is once we identify where these myths are and the power that they hold within our lives, how do we change them? What is the first step really to uncovering who it was that convinced us that these myths were true? Now that's something you've got to go back in your life and really process who your influential people were, whether they were parents or peers or in some cases teachers or people in pop culture. I'm 45 years old and I'm still learning to unpack some of these core myths and where this programming occurred for myself. And I think it's really, really interesting to kind of go back and relive some of these memories and moments. And one thing I really try not to do is like place blame. Because in most cases, when these people gave you this core myth, they weren't intending to do so. And in some cases, they were probably trying to protect you. So just keep that in mind as you're processing some of this, is it's not about placing blame and pointing fingers. It's about acknowledging when it happened and then realizing that that person in that moment was wrong, right? They were maybe reacting out of their own personal myths or experiences, or who even knows what happened with them the moment before that messaging came to you. So I challenge you to go at this with some compassion and try to really analyze these moments in your life, again, without placing blame, but just finding where these things happened, where this messaging happened, and just understanding that it really wasn't true and that they really are myths. And with that, I hope we can get to a place where we all believe that we are special, that we are enough, and we are beautiful. I mean, imagine if every day your core myths, those subscriptions, were those choices, how you would go out into the world with confidence, with excitement to achieve something, and a belief that you are enough and beautiful to be in that space and attract who you want in the world. There's some tea for you on Thirsty Thursday. Thirsty Thursday, we like to spill some tea. So to share a little bit more about my personal story, after I moved back from New York and I was sort of reevaluating my career, my Blue Man journey had ended and I moved back to LA very conflicted about what I wanted to do. During that show process, I learned a lot about art and we got to play with paint as Blue Men. And so I started playing with paint as a sort of therapy to sort of help me sort through emotions. My mom is also an incredible artist and introduced me to oil paint when I was a kid. So picking up the paintbrush and playing with color and form and shape and harmony and balance, it just all came really natural to me and it was very therapeutic. And in my late 20s, I really started painting a lot. In fact, for my 27th birthday, I had a big art opening at a local gallery and invited friends and family members. And it was such an exciting moment because I could showcase not only this art that I'd been working on, but each of these pieces meant something different. They were emotional journeys. There was one called Inspiration. There was one called Night Spy that was very clever and devious. There was all of these different emotions in paintings. And what happened was I got a lot of attention from friends that wanted to commission art pieces, but also an interior designer got wind of my work. And she really was such an advocate for me as an artist and started using my paintings in her interior design projects. With her, I decided to lean into design. I've always had a passion for interior design and spaces and surface materials and backsplashes and all things design oriented. As a kid, I even wanted to be an architect. So at this point in my acting career, I was a little frustrated because I just came to this realization that if I didn't have family in the industry, or I wasn't a child star, or someone that had really been working at my craft and in the industry for years and years, I was at a disadvantage and it would be very hard for me to have a stable career. Sure, I could book a show here or there, get a commercial, do a musical theater tour. I got the experience of doing, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat and Cabaret and some of these great musicals that I loved and admired. I was in a couple popular TV shows at the time doing glorified extra work and having one-line, featured moments. But there was no real solid career path for me as an actor. And so I decided I wanted a little bit of financial autonomy. And working with this interior designer, I decided to go back to school for interior design and get a master's degree from UCLA. And that was such a wonderful time in my life because I really could hone in on my design skills and work on projects. I did a variety of interior design projects that got published in magazines like Architectural Digest and Home Magazine, small room decorating, and I felt like I've got this pathway to this really great design career. Well, unfortunately, right when I was about to graduate from the program, it was in 2008, the economy crashed. And when that happened, the design industry, the real estate market, everything just stopped. And the carpet ultimately got pulled out from under me in that career. The firm I was working for went out of business. And I was left with this, what do I do now moment again. And I was pushing 30. And one of my mentors, my aunt, I was on the phone with her and she said, Brooke, if you could do anything in the world, what would it be? And I thought to myself, just release any actual reality to this. I want to travel and I want to shop. Two of my favorite things. And I just put that out in the universe and finished the conversation very well knowing that probably didn't exist. But let's evaluate with what I wanted to do. And at that time, I was friends with a lot of performers and dancers. And I had heard about a good friend of mine that got off of cruise ships. And I had auditioned for cruise ships in the past, but I never really clicked in. And so I got on the phone with my friend and she told me about a position called art auction. And I knew a lot about art. I was in the art world as a painter myself. And there was this company called Park West that I could work for and I could make a lot of money. I could work on cruise ships. I could be a part of entertainment. So I reached out and not within 2 weeks of this phone call, I was on a Zoom with this company, Park West, interviewing for a job as an art auctioneer. And they were like, well, we've got a training happening next week, but you've got to get on a plane in 5 days and come to Miami. And I was like, whoa, what is this? Am I going to just pack up my life? I had a car and a dog, and I lived in this mosaic tiled mansion on the side of the Hollywood Hills. Like, I had a really great setup in LA. But here was an opportunity for me to travel the world and do something different. And I could even just work one contract, save up a bunch of money, and then come right back to where I was in LA and not have to work at restaurants, have enough money to like pursue my career again. So I decided to do it. I took a big risk. I packed up my life. I had about 3 days to get all my stuff in storage. I learned and studied about classical artists and classical art techniques, about etchings, about lithographs, about seriographs, and was off to Miami. And if I went to Miami, I had to pass training, and I'd go from there directly to a cruise ship for 6 months. But if I didn't pass training, they'd send me home. Well, I wasn't going to pack up all my stuff and sell my car and move out of my apartment just to have to come back to LA. So I knew I had to pass this training. Anyway, one of the most serendipitous moments of my life happened within these couple of days. I packed up my apartment, my last night in LA. I had all my friends come over. I put this notice out on Facebook. It's my last night. Come say goodbye. Come help me pack up and take anything that I'm not bringing with me. I wanted to give away my liquor cabinet. I wanted to pass off some of my things that I didn't want to put in storage. So it was this open invite. That night, a good friend of mine that I was selling my car to came by, and he was going to give me $5,000 in cash, pretty much the only money that I had, and he was going to take my car. So my friends are all up in my house. Now, mind you, I'm in the Hollywood Hills. My neighbors are Kathy Griffin and Quentin Tarantino. I'm in a pretty nice neighborhood. So I'm out in my car. I'm in the front seat, and my friend's in the passenger seat. He's just given me his cash. I'm going through the maintenance records in the glove box, and I see, I'll never forget, this red Tiburon come up and park right in front of my car. And I'm thinking to myself, who do I know that drives a red Tiburon? And a gentleman came out of the passenger seat with a hoodie, all zipped up, couldn't see his face. He wasn't in the driver's seat, comes out the passenger seat, comes along, knocks on my window. And I remember like, who do I know? Who is this? I roll down my window. He pulls out a gun and puts it to my head and says, give me your wallet. Now I'm shocked. I also have to say that this was not just a normal gun. Do you remember the movie, The Mexican, like the musket gun that movie was based around? That's what this gun was. It was like this antique gun. So I was afraid, but I didn't really believe that this was happening. This wasn't like a revolver. And I was just stunned. And he asked me for my wallet. Now, fact, I didn't have my wallet. I had a pocket full of cash, but not my wallet. So I said, I don't have my wallet. And he clocked me in the head, pistol whipped me so hard I was seeing stars. And at that point, I was terrified. And so he said, stop fucking around. And to my friend, give me your wallet. He did have his wallet. It was empty. But threw him his wallet. My hands were on the steering wheel. I had some bracelets on and a ring. He took my jewelry. He asked me then to throw the car keys out of the window. I didn't know why. I thought, is he going to try to steal the car? That can't happen. I just sold it. So I chuck him out really far. And then he turns around, walks away, gets in the car, and drives. Now at this point, I'm just in shock. I'm like, what the fuck just happened? Did I just get mugged in front of my house with like my entire apartment filled with my family and friends? Like, this is crazy. But I'm in so much shock, I just get out of the car. I go find the keys. I go up to the stairs into my apartment. I see my friend Brian at my desk who's packing up my computer, and I'm white as a ghost, I think. He looks at me and he's like, what's wrong? At that point, I even think I had blood dripping down the side of my head. And then I just lose it. I just break down and cry. At that point, we call the cops, and I just felt so silly because I didn't even look at the license plate. I had no information about this car other than it was a red Tiburon. So what really could they do? Now, you're probably asking yourself, why are you telling us this story, Brooke? And the reason I am is because this was such a moment in my life where I had some doubts about what I was doing. I had doubts if I was enough to go just pursue this job on cruise ships. I had doubts about like if I could make this happen, but I did it because I knew that this was a once-in-a-life opportunity. And when that happened, that was like this sign from the universe that I was done with LA. I could no longer live in this amazing mosaic tiled mansion because I just got mugged out in front of it. I was afraid now to go outside of that house. So it was just this moment in my life where I knew it. I knew that this was the right move, that I was supposed to be taking this adventure and going out and working on cruise ships. Ended up being one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. One contract turned into 6 or 7 contracts. And after a contract with Park West, my first contract, I found another job on cruise ships called the port and shopping guide position. And what did this person do? Did massive shopping shows in the cruise ships, in the main theater, all about shopping ashore. I would do diamond and gemstone seminars, watch seminars, treasures of the port seminars. I got to travel the world. I went to about 30 different countries over the 5 years I was working on cruise ships, ultimately getting paid to travel and shop. I don't know if it was a manifestation I made on that phone call with my aunt that day, but all I knew is that did exist and I somehow found it. So again, I think my point to this story is you never know what life is going to bring you, right? And if we can really evaluate some of these core myths and really genuinely fuel our confidence and just ask ourselves, what really do we want? Like if we put everything away, what do we want? What makes us happy? And genuinely believe that it does exist. You may not know the pathway to it, but just knowing it, just acknowledging it will allow some of those avenues that the universe has a magical way of bringing us to will materialize in your life. So a little bit more tea for you on this Thirsty Thursday. I know there's so many things I can talk about, and I will in future episodes. I really want to thank you for joining me for Spill the Tea with Brook Casey. This is going to be a really fun ride and a really fun journey. And I've got so many great things that I want to talk about that I genuinely believe will be helpful. If you found any of this helpful, please comment, share, subscribe. I'm just learning about how to do this whole podcast thing, but I'm super passionate about it and really excited about it. I've got some great future episodes for you. A lot about mental health, a lot about processing, and a lot about how we can show up for each other. These are really, really tough times. Right now, I can't even turn on the news. It's so incredibly depressing what's happening in the world. And I'm also faced with these anger issues where I'm dealing with how and who allowed this to happen. How did we as a nation vote for fascism? How is this our reality? And I know a lot of us are struggling with it, but my good friend Jody was just in town for Sketchfest, and she's launching this new show called Smoke Show with Sweden. And it was such a great time to have comedy. It was such a great time to lean into the arts. And so my tip for any of you that are going through some of these really dark thoughts and emotions about what's definitely show up for that. Call your senators, be active on social media about perpetuating true narratives, but also take some time to lean into the arts. Take some time to take care of yourself and your mental health. Surround yourself with positive people. Go out and see comedy. Go out and see live music. Go out and find your little 90s rave kid and dance until the sun rises. These are things that fuel our soul, that make us not only feel good about ourselves, but allow us to sleep at the end of the night and allow us to really feel like we're okay. We're gonna be okay. There's the tea. Thanks so much for joining me again on this first episode. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I can't wait to spill some tea with you more in the future. Like a nice hot cup of tea, I hope it's soothing for the throat, soothing for the life. So I want to thank you for joining me on this very first episode of Spill the Tea with Brook Casey. These are going to be honest talks about healing and keeping your sparkle in a chaotic world. So thanks for joining me, and please join me for some more Spill the Tea with Brook Casey. Talk conversations about queer joy, mental health, and saying yes to life, even when it's hard. Cheers.